It's a few minutes past 10 p.m. and this is NTV On The Spot. I'm filling in some very large shoes left behind by Patrick Kamara, who will be talking to us in the last segment of this program from Fort Portal Town. But of course, today we have a very strong debate on the electoral roadmap, and we have with us to discuss that the Electoral Commission Chairman, Justice Simon Byabakama, and we also have a presidential aspirant, Lieutenant General Henry Tumkunde. Let's now first look at what the issues we're going to discuss. A heated debate continues to rage on about the revised 2021 election roadmap that imposed a ban of public open-air rallies. Political parties, civil society organizations, and some religious leaders have openly expressed their reservations with the changes in the roadmap. Some have even asked whether they can produce a credible election with this roadmap. So how can the Electoral Commission strike a balance between the political and health rights of Ugandans in the run-up to this 2021 general election? And to answer this, we have our two guests. But let's take a short break. We return and start the conversation. Thank you so much for coming back and for staying with us. Like I told you, we have the Lieutenant General Henry Tumkunde with us. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mjuni. Good evening, viewers.
And we have the Justice Simon Byabakama with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mjuni,
yes.
And good evening, viewers.
We want to start with you. You're in the hot seat. Can you produce a credible election from the roadmap that you've presented to Ugandans? Do you honestly believe a credible election can emerge from it?
If you want a straight answer, yes, we can.
How is that going to happen? And I want us to, before we even discuss the merits and demerits of having a credible election, just how is this election going to happen?
Well, first of all, let me point out or inform the viewers that an election is not a mere event. It's a process. It's a process of a series of activities which are sequential, one act or one activity leading to another. And when we launched the 2021 general elections roadmap in December 2018, we did set out in the roadmap so many activities which would be undertaken leading up to polling. Now, before COVID intervened, we had already undertaken so many of those activities. We had already concluded the process of demarcating electoral areas, reorganizing polling stations, creating new ones, merging others. We had already completed the process of updating the voters register, that is permitting or allowing new voters to get on the national voters register, and also those who wanted to transfer voting location to do so from what the polling station they voted from in 2016 to the station of their choice currently. We had also completed the process of displaying that register. We had completed the process of cleaning up the register. Now we were in the process, we had also undertaken the process of compiling what we call the registers for the special interest groups, that is the elderly persons, the youth, and persons with disabilities. Now we were just on the verge of commencing the actual polling activities for the special interest groups, that is nominations of special interest group candidates when COVID came in and the lockdown stalled everything. Now, at the time the time when we revised and issued when we issued the revised roadmap, we were now going back to where we stopped, and that is embarking on actualizing elections involving the special interest groups. Now, at the moment, this is what is pending, and this is what we are leading to. And the political parties have been asked, therefore, to actualize or put in motion their own internal processes. First, to begin with identifying the flag bearers for the special interest group elections, which are scheduled for 11th, 13th and 17th of August this month. Thereafter, we shall have processes leading up to nominations for the local government elections, then parliamentary elections, then finally presidential elections. So in our view, apart from the fact that we have said, owing to the COVID pandemic, it is not possible to have the usual open-air carnival-like public rallies which gather large crowds of people, where you cannot really observe what is very difficult to observe the SOPs like social distancing, washing of hands, putting on masks, and so on and so forth. So the other aspects, therefore, of the general election remain on course.
Why do you believe that this can't happen during the rallies, but it will happen on the polling day itself in February?
On polling, the polling station, remember polling occurs at a polling station.
Exactly.
And in this general election, we are going to have 34,344 polling stations. Now, a polling station is easy to manage. One, people come in an orderly manner. When people come to vote, you put them in an orderly fashion in a line or a queue. You have a polling constable at the station to ensure everything is orderly. You have polling officials. You have candidates' agents. We shall, in addition now, have to employ or deploy another constable to make sure people observe the SOPs. Now, if, for instance, you have about 100 voters approaching the polling station at one go, we won't allow all those numbers in the queue leading up to the officer who is giving out, one who is identifying the voter or the voters, and two, who is giving out the ballot papers. We shall say allow, probably depending on the size of the polling station, say about 10 or 20 people in a queue where social distancing can be observed. But then the others can be made to wait somewhere.
Justice Simon, I just want to stop you in your tracks there. You seem to imagine that Ugandans will show up in an orderly fashion, but that's not the political culture of Uganda. On voting day, people drum, people dance in the streets, people rush to go and vote their candidate. They will come in packs. In some polling stations, like Chiwunya Zone, you have one polling station with over 3,000 voters. And all these must vote between 8 and 6 p.m.
No,
is it logically possible?
Actually, on the contrary, we always say in the guidelines that all these campaign-related activities, like playing music, drumming, dancing, and so on, all those cease on the day we say campaigns should end. And on polling day, one of the things that is not permitted is for you to move around with the music blaring, my candidate, and so on and so forth. We do not allow people to come in the vicinity of the polling station making a noise and so on and so forth. I've been to so many polling stations in the by-elections that we have been conducting since I came into office. Polling day is normally cool and calm. I can say that. Because all these other festivities we've been witnessing during campaigns do not take place on polling day. So from my experience, it is easy to manage the way people are assembled at a polling station other than a public rally. You cannot do that at a public rally.
I want us to bring in Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde here. On June the 22nd, you wrote to the Electro Commission Chairman. I don't know if you've checked your letterbox because you haven't responded to his correspondence. But you intend to run for the presidency. Yeah. Does what Justice Simon Byabakama say? Does it make sense to you?
Well, the most important question I would want to ask, of course you put us in a lot of difficulties in TV. You can imagine a justice of appeal facing a mere lawyer like myself. Chairman of the Electro Commission.
I will be a neutral arbiter for this one.
No, Chairman of the Electro Commission. He had judges on my quite a lot. And you can imagine if I was the president tomorrow and today, the Honorable Justice of Appeal would have offended me. Anyway, those are jokes aside.
I have told the viewers that you signed not to sack him after he became president.
Let's get to the issues. First of all, I enjoy the way the chairman is, you have said I call you the chairman. Let me call you the chairman by your permission, sir. I enjoy the way you are simplifying this whole matter. First of all, what is important about an election? You must access the voter, and he must access you. He must preferably listen to you. If can, look at you. Checking even things like the mood of your face and many other things. But that said and done, there is also that this voter, for example, must have capacity to do articulate comparison of the people who are seeking to be voted in office. Apart from what me and you will flash on the news that I did Bachelor of Laws and Masters in that, he needs to see you even articulating the issues. That's why at a time like this one, for example, you will hear so many, everyone is watching. They want to know what is being said on this election. That is number one. So you must access the voter must access you, and the voter must retain the right to choose, having fully assessed who exactly is seeking to lead the country or to lead his constituency. And in this particular case, it is even more serious that they are going to choose who will lead the country, because we are also having a presidential election, as you are referring to me. Now, that is a matter we must necessarily address. Now, according to what is being laid by the Electoral Commission in the roadmap, we are supposed to go to the radio. And simplified as it is, this radio is like NTV. The only radio that is near to the authority, or a media house that is near to the authority of Chairman Byabakama, is Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. Uganda Broadcasting Corporation actually is not in his own full control. He does not control Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, which is the so-called government, you know, who elects the board and you know who does all these things. It is not in his control. Now, the other point I want to make is that even if it was in his control, I'm not too sure that he can command the biases, the prejudices of the board, let alone the executive authority, let alone the editors. Because there are so many interests that influence situations in this country. I am not too sure that he is in full control. This is Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. There is also another fundamental factor. Does it reach everybody? You want to tell me there are transmitters everywhere. These people who you are, imposing this, difficult situation of listening to everybody, do they have radios? If you are supplying radios, when are these radios reaching them? If they reach them, are you buying them batteries? If you are not buying them batteries, if you are buying them batteries, are there transmitters in every corner of this country? If transmitters are there, how about the audibility? You want to tell me all these radios are audible. Some of them are locational radios. They do not reach every corner you would want to reach. But even said and done, Chairman, these radios belong to other people. They don't belong to you. These radios, unless, the government can do many things. I've seen many laws being innovated. I think in this period and time, we should nationalize the radios. We can break the rules of free market economy and return to our old socialist self in the days of '69 and nationalize radios for the period and time when this election will be in process. We are being very innovative. Otherwise, I want to understand one important question. Assuming, yes, you say you booked me. If Mr. Mushun, you did not invite me here, do you think I have a right to come and access this TV station without your authority? What if I did? and you said, yes, Mr. Tumukunde, you can come and access my radio, but the program I have is at midnight, when everybody has slept. What will I do? There is also another fundamental reason. Who pays these radios? Is it me? If, for example, paying these radios is at the highest temperature of the electoral process, what if you say, for every hosting I have to offer you, you've got to pay 10 million? Where do I get this money? Even if it was to be, as the chairman wants to say, let's assume he's getting magnanimous, he's owning the election, and he's saying, I'm going to pay. He who pays the piper determines the tune. What powers do I have myself? And this is just at the extreme end of things.
General, I hear you raising so many questions
Yes.
about the manner of conduct of campaigns. I don't hear you responding to Justice Simon Byabakama's principal concern. There are 894 cases of COVID-19 in the country.
Yes.
If you allowed Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde to walk through Kampala, people will gather around him. And when they gather around him, the chances of spreading the virus are high. What's the solution?
I was
for
coming to that. Let me go to his specific example about the election day. He's telling me people will be held some distance away from the polling station. First of all, at which pace are you going to conduct this election? Are we going to have 3 days of electioneering? The other point I want to make, how many policemen do you have? He says he's going to deploy a constable. Let's assume you have 60,000 policemen and you've got 34 polling stations. Does it mean you are going to abandon all other activities of the Uganda police to go and just man, polling stations? That's also the other point is, if we are campaigning and we are competing for winning an election, let's go to people who are monitoring this election. Don't you have agents? How many are they? When these agents are operating, who is commanding the whole process? Let's even go to the nitty-gritties of the electoral process itself. Who is handling these documents? You know how many times I had to wash my hands, and how I respect you for following these rules. But let me ask you, this person giving away ballot papers, how many times is it? Have you seen what was happening in Burundi? Some didn't have masks. Now, get to that and come to going to the election itself. Do you know you have to do stamping? And when you do, are you going to be changing pads every 2 voters or every 1 voter? How about things like the pens which are used? How sure are you that we are actually? And go back to the beginning of the process. Where are you going to keep this crowd who are anxious to vote? And who is going to supervise the order thereon? And they are on the spot. Who is going to supervise the order? Is it the candidates? Is it what if there comes up incidences like somebody is trying to, manipulate a voting process, and there is necessarily some bit of chaos? Assuming it happens in 10,000 of the 34,000 stations, how much control do we have over this? In these circumstances, I can only make one statement without offending the chairman of the Electoral Commission. I doubt how much of this is in his control or in the control of his own staff. And I don't know how much of this is in his control when the temperatures of the election rise. And we have a precedent, Mr. Mujuni. Yesterday, 2016, I was playing in these elections. It took 8 whole hours to land electoral materials to Wakiso. 8. Now you can imagine now you've got to have fewer people than you can have in a car. You've got to have these kind of circumstances. What is spectacular? What new competence has the Electoral Commission employed in their own, institutions, in their own logistics, that we may then now imagine that the world is changing, Uganda is going miraculous. What is it? I wish I would know.
All right. Justice Byabakama, you have a full plate of the questions that he raises. And the key one that I want you to respond to is the one that he just ended with. You planned this election all the way from July to December last year. COVID-19 wasn't here. COVID-19 is here. have you since gone back to the drawing board and addressed some of the concerns that he's raised? And do you have any new competencies? Have you thought through the process to the end?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mujuni. And first of all, the issue General Tumukunde has raised of the voter and the candidate linking up or understanding one another is very crucial. That's very important. And secondly, when we say that we are banning mass campaign rallies, we also stated that we shall be engaging with the various stakeholders to look at other avenues, other alternatives, which can be brought into play so as to circumvent, to mitigate on the impact COVID has had leading to the ban of mass rallies. And as a result, we have been having many consultative engagements with the various political actors, political parties, and other organizations. I think General Tumukunde he was invited to the commission today to interact with us.
For the first time.
I believe.
You always invite iPod. It's as if we are playing on the sidelines, Mr. Chairman.
No,
Honestly,
no, there was a time. There was a time for everything.
We need to be fully considered.
Let's have him respond.
So we invited him. Unfortunately, I was not around. I was at Sheraton because there was this
It's
Netherlands.
as if we are stepwives in the process.
Netherlands, the Netherlands, this INIMIT, which had organized a workshop at Sheraton. But the point we are making is that we are in consultations with various political parties, with political actors, civil society organizations, and other interested groups to see how we can devise other means other than radio campaigns. Are there other measures that we can apply or bring into effect without endangering the lives of the people, without exposing them to this COVID pandemic? And I want to say that we have discussed so many other avenues with the various stakeholders, which we are considering. And very soon
what are some of these?
Some of these are, for example, they are saying, why don't we have controlled gatherings? For example, about 20 or 50 or 100 people in an area where social distancing can be observed, and all these other SOPs can effectively be realized or observed. So these are some of the measures. People are saying, how about flyers, how about posters, and so on, that kind of thing. You see, we are looking at a whole range of alternatives which can be brought into effect in addition to the media platform campaigns. Now, on the issue of, yes, General, you're absolutely right. We recognize in our interactions that many of these radios and TVs are privately owned. And many of the owners, we are told, are actually practicing politicians. Maybe
belonging to a certain party.
Belonging to a certain party or parties, whichever.
It's fine to say it. Majority of them are ruling party MPs.
Right.
Now,
we are going to have discussions with the Minister of Information, Uganda Communications Commission, the National Association of Broadcasters, the Uganda Media Association, all these other regulatory agencies. What we did, General, we started our engagement, our stakeholder discussions with the media broadcasters. We started with the talk show hosts, we started with the political editors and what is the other term? Political editors and reporters. We started with the online platform operators and so on and so forth. So we are taking a whole range of measures to see how, because this concept of banning mass public rallies has been brought about by COVID, in order to mitigate some of the effects, the impact of COVID, just we have done with other normal life activities. How do we try to reduce the impact of COVID? And we are saying, look, let's look at a whole range of other alternatives, a whole range of measures that can be applied to cater for the situation that General Tumukunde is scared of. How will there be interaction.
Worried about
Chair, I wanted to stop you a little bit there, because when you say banning of mass rallies, and I wanted us to get into this debate, under what law are you banning mass rallies? And I know that you're likely to quote Section 12 of the Electoral Commission Act and Section 21 of the Presidential Elections Act, but those only give you the mandate in the organization of how candidates should behave. But the freedoms of assembly, the freedoms of expression, which are guaranteed by the constitutions, the Electoral Commission Act is merely an act. It's not
But we have not banned freedom of expression. When you get on radio or TV, you are freely expressing yourself.
But you've stopped people from assembling. The freedom of assembly is affected.
When you go on social media, you can freely, you are freely expressing your views. We have not stopped that. So we are not in any way in breach of the constitutional liberties. And secondly, we are saying, for goodness sake, when COVID was when lockdown was first announced, the government said, stay at home. Stay at home. Don't go to your places of worship. Our children should not go to school, and so on and so forth. Ugandans willingly surrendered to those liberties for a while. They did. And we are saying in the same spirit, for the very reason as to why we were ready to surrender those rights, to put aside those rights, the reason still prevails. Now, when it comes to political rallies, we are still trying to prevent what these measures did or aim at when we were told to surrender our liberties, to move and so on, and avoid the spread of the pandemic. And we're saying when it comes to political activities, campaign rallies is one way, according to the Minister of Health experts, is one way of simply exponentially passing on this virus. Okay? Now, we are saying, okay, in a similar vein, can we also act the political actors to partially surrender that right? We are looking at other alternatives as to how you can get linked up with your voters and pass on your message. And we are saying, if you look at our press release, by the way, we do not say campaign rallies banned and all other forms of campaigns are banned. You shall only go on radios, on TVs, and other media platforms. We do not say that.
Justice
we
Simon,
say, yes.
yes, I'm going to allow Lieutenant General.
I have not responded to the other question he said.
We will get to that. We will get to that. But in the legal toolbox of the things that could potentially happen, one of the things, and if you received the letter of Lieutenant General Tumukunde, he cited Article 77 of the Constitution and said it's possible that you could also have written to Parliament and asked them, extend the tenure of Parliament. Let's wait until COVID-19 goes away. We have an election.
Now, if you look at Article 77, if you look at that article.
But also, more importantly, are you going to respond to his letter?
Yes. But we have the first, by the way, we believe responding to letters in writing is good. But we believe one of the most effective ways of responding and understanding one another is interacting. General Tumukunde, we have interacted with him this morning. I was not present.
Among us, a group of 7 to 8.
But we can always interact.
Presidential candidates.
We can always.
Yes.
So
on that one, have you explored the option of writing to Parliament to extend their tenure?
Now, I'm coming to that. Yes. That's what I'm coming to. Our mandate is derived from Article 61, Clause 2.
Thank you.
Which commands us to hold these elections within a specific period before the expiry of the term of this government. That's, if you look at Article 61, Clause 2, there is nowhere it intimates or indicates or even gives a room to the Commission to say we cannot do it as commanded or as required. We cannot do it. And second, when you look at Article 77, which talks of, it's the only article, by the way, in a law, the only article, even a provision among all other laws, which talks of a situation where an election may not take place.
Yes.
And that article lays out, there's one, first of all, it is under the chapter headed the legislature, chapter 6, the legislature. One, the owners and activators of this article is the legislature, the parliament. And it says whether there exists a state of war. Question.
But
General Tumukunde, wait a minute. Or a state of emergency. Is it within the competence of the Electoral Commission to determine whether there is a state of war or emergency in the country? Secondly, it says, which would prevent a normal general election from being held. It's not enough to merely say there is a situation which amounts to a state of emergency or a state of war. That is all subject to proof and evidence. Secondly, you need to prove that that situation would prevent a normal general election from taking place.
But you seem to have already arrived at that decision.
We
that,
have
you
no-
know,
yes,
in the country we can't hold
Yes.
mass rallies.
But
Candidates can't
No.
interact.
Is an election defined primarily and solely by mass rallies? Is that the sole activity that it determines the fairness, the freeness, and the credibility of an election? Secondly, if we have said that there are no mass rallies, have we said candidates are not allowed to campaign at all? Because of COVID, no campaigns, just get nominated and wait for polling for voters voting. We have said there are other measures in place. So to me, the challenge those who are advocating for this is, one, what is the state of emergency we are dealing with? It is not within the Electoral Commission's competence or jurisdiction to determine the situation we are faced with is a state of emergency. Secondly, what is this state of emergency such that it prevents a normal election from taking place? Let me show you. We have had one aspect of this, by the way, which has taken place in this country, a state of war. General Tumukunde is aware. In northern Uganda, in eastern Uganda, we had a war situation. But in those periods, we had general elections taking place. It was never canvassed or even proposed that because of this war we have in these parts of the country, we cannot have a normal election. So to those who, the propagators of this, will have to prove, one, what is it that is a state of emergency?
Let's allow Lieutenant General Tumukunde, because he's the one that initially raised the point.
First of all, Mr. Moderator, you may have to allow this debate to take serious balance.
Yes,
Yeah,
I am sorry. I am sorry, but
otherwise
the
I'm
chairman had a lot
I'm
of
going
ambit.
I'm going to feed on a lot of lectures. And, yes,
I
but
apologize.
let's get to the issues.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If the situation is normal, why are we here? We are here debating a complete change of what is an otherwise normal situation.
What is a normal situation?
Well, but why did you have to draw a new roadmap? Why did you have to do new? Now I'm told they are introducing a statutory instrument. Why is all this happening? It is happening because the situation is not normal. And I'm glad, Mr. Chairman, you are admitting this is not in your powers. But can I tell you what is in your powers, Mr. Chairman? To declare and say, from what we are seeing and the circumstances that are likely to come, because there's also the circumstances that are likely to come. We've got India, we've got Pakistan, we've got Brazil. You know what is happening there. You know, pandemonium, everything is happening. What if it happened in Uganda? And I saw how closely you're working, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to wish you bad luck. But the way you are so hefty and hectic in these circumstances, where you are trying to create everything in such a short time, what if any of you got COVID-19? What would happen? What would we really do? You see, the fundamental point, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mjuni, is that, is this a normal situation? If it is, why are you laboring with amending laws? Then, if it is not in your mandate to do this, do one simple thing. Write the Parliament of Uganda and the Executive of the Republic of Uganda and simply say, we are under pressure, as I can tell you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen you in normal circumstances. Fortunately, we do you. It is evident that you're under gazetted pressure. You tell these people and say, the way things are, we are not sailing in very easily. Can you please tell us what next to do? Then it ceases to be your matter. But you seem to own it on behalf of everybody. That's a whole paradox. That's a whole thing we don't seem to understand. Let's go to the issue you are raising, Mr. Chairman. You are saying that is it just mass rallies? It is not mass rallies. For example, in the new instrument, and I want to come to it, you are introducing the Health Act as part of law that is going to govern elections. Yes, the Health Act is now actually the principal law governing elections. From this new instrument I'm reading, and I'm told it is going to be tabled in Parliament, and I'm told it's now public. That's how I got it. I got it, this one from a source just inside here. Now, if that is so, who is in control of the election? Who decides that wrong has been done? Is it no longer Electoral Commission, or it is those who command the Health Act? These are fundamental questions we need to answer. I'm sure you heard what the chairman is trying to do in 6 months. He's trying to order elections for, special groups. He's trying to listen to us to see if there is a way we can campaign in a different way. He's trying to, I can see here they are amending laws to see that, even owning constitutions of parties. If you see the effect of all this, they are owning constitutions of parties. You can't believe it. They are saying where the party acts like it should not have acted, it shall be because this law has authorized it. You can imagine. Meaning, therefore, even internal democracy within parties is being murdered. Internal democracy within political groups is being murdered. For me, the point I want answered in this debate, and we are happy and lucky to have you, Mr. Chairman, are these normal circumstances? If they are not, who is supposed to say so? It is not yourself. It is not any attempt to elect some, Russia laws and instruments. It is to tender it where it belongs. By you admitting that you are no longer in control, especially considering that if this instrument is passed, the Health Act will be the determinant law. Then which law is governing this election?
All right, thank you so much. And of course, the one thing that's normal on this program is that we always take a break. So we'll now take a very short break, but we'll return with a more heated conversation on which direction should the 2021 election take. Do stay with us, though. Thank you so much for staying with us and coming back to this debate. It was a heated debate before we went out, so I want Justice Byabakama to start from where we stopped on the election that we're going to have. What kind of election? There are many concerns that have been raised, and one of those concerns is, among the tools at your disposal, one of those tools is to write to Parliament and tell them these are not normal circumstances. You seem to agree that there's a level of abnormality in even your own roadmap. You've changed it thrice now since December. Does that mean that you can write to Parliament and tell them maybe that was not the time to have an election?
I think when we're addressing issues of elections, the do's and don'ts, we must begin from the position of what the law says. Before you can talk of what is a normal election or not, look at whether there is a definition. First of all, whether a normal election is defined anywhere in any provision of the law. And secondly, I've said, the only inference to a normal election is in Article 77 of the Constitution, which talks of, I'm more comfortable when I'm looking at the provision, which talks of a situation which would prevent a normal general election. Not a situation that gives rise to abnormal situations or circumstances. Is the situation such that it prevents a normal election from taking place? And we have said, in our view as Electoral Commission, looking at the series of activities that are undertaken in the general election cycle, the only aspect that appears to have drawn concern and that generates this debate is the issue of campaigns. That because you cannot have traditional mass rallies, and therefore that amounts to a situation which prevents a normal general election from taking place. As I said, one, that is not within our domain to determine. But secondly, it's not every abnormality that necessarily implies you cannot have a normal election. That's not. How many abnormalities do you have to deal with every day? It's not that if you have, for example, landslides somewhere, and therefore it's an abnormality, of course, because the people in that area are also entitled to vote. They have a right to vote. But is that abnormality of such magnitude or such that it prevents a normal election from being held? We are saying COVID, of course. First of all, nobody could have foreseen COVID-19. It has affected our lives to a large extent. We are saying, yes, it has affected the way we handle or we hold our campaigns in the normal carnival-like manner. But the question is, has it completely stopped as a result of COVID-19? Has it completely erased the process of campaigns? Has COVID erased completely the process of nominations of candidates? Has COVID completely erased the process of polling? If you have those definites, then you can say we have a situation which would prevent a normal election from taking place.
Tomorrow.
So for me, I'm distinguishing between an abnormality and a situation which prevents a normal election from taking place. Is the abnormality such that it prevents a normal election from taking place? And to what degree, in what context does it prevent the election from taking place? In what context?
Yeah, I just want to just park there and ask you a question. Tomorrow, if you say you're going to nominate presidential candidates,
yes,
you will require of Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde here to submit to you signatures.
Yes.
There are 45 districts in the country where public transport is not allowed.
No, it was easily down. I think they are remaining about 7
but
now.
His agents will need to move in those areas to be able to get those signatures.
Yes.
If he shows up tomorrow and says, I've not been able to get signatures from these districts, will then that be an abnormality? Is that an abnormality you're willing to listen to?
Okay. Let me first say this. First of all, General, before we came up with this measure in the revised roadmap of banning mass campaign rallies, we had engagement with the Minister of Health. We had engagement with the Minister of Health experts. And we looked at the whole series of activities in an electoral cycle. And their focus was on those activities which have the tendency to gather big crowds. And their concern was focused on that. And arising out of engagements with them, that's when we decided that to avoid what Minister of Health officials are saying, are fearing, let us say no mass rallies. Okay? Now, we are continuing to work with the Minister of Health because this is a situation not purely for Electoral Commission. It is concerns all of us as Ugandans. We are going to continue working with the Minister of Health because General Tumukunde indeed is required by law to gather signatures, 100 signatures, from 2/3 of the districts in the country. What if General Tumukunde has to go to those areas, okay, which are still under lockdown? We engage Minister of Health. We engage Minister of Health. We say, Minister of Health, we have this situation, we have this scenario. How do we go about, how is the situation on the ground now in those areas? Yeah, people, is this candidate, is this aspirant, rather, is this aspirant at liberty? Can he move around and gather these signatures? We are going to work hand in hand with Minister of Health. And let me also talk about the issue of the law. The Public Health Act is one of the laws enacted by Parliament. And by all accounts, to all intents and purposes, even when we are having an election or any other activity, we must be cognizant of those other laws which are in place for our own good, because laws are made for the good of the people. I do not want to think that one can argue or raise the narrative that, look, for as long as you're applying measures or provisions of Public Health Act, therefore you have subjugated your authority or your mandate to another agency. That is not true. Even when people come to vote, they need to be alive, they need to be healthy, COVID or no COVID. So in my view, the fact of applying the Public Health Act in some processes concerning elections does not necessarily mean that some other agencies in control. The Electoral Commission remains the primary manager and organizer and convener of elections.
Lieutenant General, you have a battle.
I'm still concerned that
on that statutory instrument. Can I comment about it? Just 1 second.
Let's listen to Lieutenant General. Then
you see, yes. This is an instrument coming. or on the way or already there. And I want to read you one part, Mr. Chairman. Internal organization of political parties organization. A political party organization shall, in conduct of its internal affairs, in addition to complying with Article 71 and 72 of the Constitution, adhere to the Health Act and the rules made thereunder for the control of infectious diseases. You see the point. For example, if your laws contradict with the laws that are under the Public Health Act, who prevails? We are in the center of an election and there is a debate. I want to go and gather signatures, and I don't know why Mr. Mshundin to raise that people who are going to guarantee me in an election may have to need to know me. Yes, you can't guarantee somebody or stand surety for somebody and recommend him to stand on behalf of your party without you knowing who this person is. You must relate. And my main question is, if we follow the rules that are now being laid and further laid, there's now a new law coming up. My main question is, how long will this process take? If I don't bring these signatures on time, does this law apply, which seems to be silencing any other law? Now, the point I'm making, and there's a way, Mr. Chairman, you use interchangeable abnormal and normal, and it tends to either confuse me or leave me without picking the full context of your argument. As far as I'm concerned, once you apply the word abnormal, then it should be applied. And therefore, normal may not necessarily apply. I don't want to be a translator or interpreter of the English language. But let's get back to the important point I want to raise in this case. Why should the Public Health Act become a principal law in this election? If this is answered, then we'll bring this debate.
But surely, Lieutenant General, we are in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Surely the Public Health Act, for safety and guidelines, to safeguard the Ugandans who are going to participate in the political process, surely it should take some root. What would be the key contestation for you in the Public Health Act?
The point I'm making, we shall have more laws than ordinary applying to an election. That's the point I'm making. I'm not saying you don't have to. And you don't have to continue forcing things, packing everything together in such a short time. For example, I would want to ask a question. Why aren't school children going to school? It is because we cannot manage to control, transmission of disease in schools because of the congestion. And I would want to tell you that if you go to Chikuvo today, the message is very clear that by virtue, if rubbing together equals to attracting infection, this very virus, then you can be sure you should expect, a whirlwind very soon. Now, if that is so, why must we continue to force an election in these kind of circumstances? And in any case, if the chairman is using the word abnormal in every sentence, why doesn't he refer this matter to the executive and the legislature to decide how abnormal this abnormality is?
All right. You wanted to respond to him.
Yes. First of all, I'm not privy to this piece of legislation which General Tumukunde is referring to.
It will be in Parliament.
Yeah, it will
tomorrow.
be in Parliament.
Yes.
But the provision is read out. My understanding is that it is only extolling or calling upon the political parties that in light of this pandemic, please, when you're carrying out your internal processes, ensure that you comply with the Public Health Act and other measures, whichever are spelled out therein, in order to safeguard the lives of your members. That is what it is saying. It is not in any way impinging on the rights of those political parties to conduct their internal processes that would lead them to effectively participate in these elections. It's just a reminder that now, please make sure you comply. And therefore, any political party which does not, for example, put hand-washing measures in their meetings and so on, will be brought to book, will be brought to account. That's how I understand it. But be that as it may, my own view is that what government is trying to do is to regularize, I think, these measures that have been put in place, and also to regularize the obligation on every stakeholder, every actor that we have to make sure that we comply with these measures that Ministry of Health has put in place. It is not in any way introducing a new concept on how the elections can be internal elections in the party can be run. But how do we keep, you see, we have two, General, we have two, what I call two twin objectives. One, to observe constitutionalism by having the people elect leaders of their choice. And secondly, to keep the people safe and alive and healthy. So we have to strike a balance between the two.
Yes, I wanted to quiz you on that. And now I want us to switch gears to the Supreme Court ruling, which in effect suggested to the Electoral Commission, not even suggested, ordered the Electoral Commission to carry out electoral reforms to make sure that the incumbency does not benefit from the processes of government during an electoral period. You have a cabinet of 43 or 45 ministers. Only 4 of them are not active participants in political processes. Majority of them are participants of the political processes and members of the ruling party. Whatever they suggest benefits them in the long run. Does the Electoral Commission, as a neutral arbiter of an electoral process, consider these regulations which are being sent down to them? Do you consider that as an incumbency, participating in the electoral process?
But I thought, Mr. Mujun, that these regulations have to be taken to Parliament. And I think Parliament is one which is supposed to, is it pass them or something like that? So therefore, really, when you take them to Parliament, which is composed of representatives of various political parties and all sectors of Ugandans, therefore you are removing it from the concept of the incumbency. You are putting it to the legislature, which is mandated to look at those laws. But let me also say this. Let me also say this, that you need laws. Why do we have to make laws? We need laws in order to address the current challenges or current issues that concern the people. That's why we need laws. Secondly, is this law in any way prohibitive in ensuring that the people of Uganda realize or get their democratic rights observed? Does it prohibit us from having a free and fair election? Or is it aiming at ensuring that, look, as we pursue the process of having a free and fair election, let us ensure the lives of the people are safeguarded? Then the issue of abnormality. I was not playing semantics when I refer to abnormality and normal. What I meant to say is the situation we have an abnormality. If it is an abnormality, is the abnormality of the degree or of a nature that satisfies that it is a state of emergency? Is that abnormality of the nature that amounts to a state of emergency? If so, if that abnormality amounts to what is termed as a state of emergency in the Constitution, is it of such a magnitude that it would prevent a normal election from taking place? That's why I'm addressing this from.
Justice Simon Byabakama, my final question to you, and then we'll go to Lieutenant General Tumukunde. You have before you currently 32 aspirants who've written expressing
over 32.
Expressing interest to run.
Yeah, I think there must be.
Yes.
By the way, since COVID, about 7 have expressed interest.
And in the consultative meetings in which you've allowed us, the media, to see, majority of them are saying this process is unfair.
Why?
I hear you listening a lot to government. I don't hear you listening to the people who've come before you to ask to run in the election. I don't hear you saying, okay, they said this.
That's why we're engaging with them.
Or to me, who is here tonight. But I want to, if we get to that point, we may lose something. You see, I know you are not privy to this law, and please my apologies to engage you where you are not so privy. But this is one important, for example, the rules of anointing candidates have changed. There is now saying election by an electoral college comprising members of an organ of the political party or organization. And I want to go to another point. If you want to use the combination of the above, A up to H, I didn't read the rest. At least I want to read one important, or any other method of meeting or conducting an election approved by, any combination of the means of the. What is essential here is that laws are being made for parties. They are saying you can line up, you can do an open ballot, you can do a secret ballot, you can do phased elections. I don't know what that implies. But they even say you can do a combination of the above. And there's one important statement here in this way. It says that if any of this happens, validity of elections, and if an election held under the regulations shall be considered, an election held under this shall be considered valid as if it had been held at a duly convened meeting, convention, or conference organized by a political party or organization under its political party constitution. You know, a lot of things are going haywire, to be very honest. My main question is here. If you say democracy is a process, if you say an election is a process, do you want to tell me that these rules in this instrument or regulations that are necessarily allowing democracy within parties? I'm saying no. But the main point I continue sticking on, why all this? It is because the situation is not normal. Why are we fire brigading? Why don't we go back to the law? That's why the chairman of the Electoral Commission, actually I forgot my constitution behind. That's why the chairman of the Electoral Commission accompanies himself with the constitution. In short, to continue to stick to the rules, to the laws as the constitution provides, but as the other laws provide.
Lieutenant General, if I could ask you a political question.
Yes.
If we stay the election, it doesn't benefit you. You could be chief executive in February if the election is carried out. If we stay the election, it doesn't benefit you. Why is this a sticking point? Why should the election be postponed?
That is, I must say, speculation.
It's speculation, but you might be chief executive.
Why all these laws are in place? We are supposed to have a free and fair election. And if these laws cease to apply, or if the circumstances cease to be applicable, what happens is that we cannot have a free and fair election. For me, that's where the bigger point is. You can see even from the party point of view, they are not going to be able to elect as they used to be. They are not going to have delegates conferences. They are not going to appoint their leaders as it should have been. Everything is already being interfered with. One reason is constant. It is because the circumstances are not normal. It relates to why children don't go to school. What is rushing us into an election? Why is the election so paramount, so fundamental? And I'll be telling you about the underlying factors, about why all this could be the rush. But for now, for all that we can't do, why must we be rushing into an election with all these risks to our life? And considering that because of the circumstances pertaining in the city today, Chikubo being the best example, and Tax Park, we are likely to have a resurgence of COVID-19. My main question is, why of all things is elections being elections and elections being elections? I wish the chairman could answer this.
Now, first of all, as I said, I have not internalized, I have not looked at that. Yeah, no, it's okay, General.
But I care to read.
Yeah, sure. I have not looked, internalized and contextualized the provisions of that statutory instrument. But as from my general understanding, from the provisions the General is reading out, what is happening, what I think government is trying to do is to ease the work of the political parties to conduct their internal processes within this context of COVID, where, for example, where they may also have to have large gatherings and so on. I think they're trying to say, no, if large gatherings are going to endanger the lives of the people, then how do we avoid that? But retain the core principle of having internal democracy in our parties so as to identify these flag bearers. That's all that is trying to do. So now, but secondly, I wish to say, since this matter is not yet law, I think it will be subjected to scrutiny by Parliament when it is presented by Attorney General, and Parliament can look at it, and I would request my brother probably present his concerns to Parliament when they are looking at this law, and point out the critical issues that he feels, or points that he feels will impinge or impact on the internal democracies of the parties and therefore of the country. But on why are we rushing? I think we are saying we are a country that abides by constitutionalism. And the Constitution commands that you, Electoral Commission, you are the managers. You must have this election in such a period. You, the executive, you must know your end. You must know when your term expires. You must know. Everybody, you, the citizens of Uganda, you must know that this government which you elected in such a year is coming to an end. And for you to exercise your rights, this shall be done in such a period. You get me? That is why we are saying, as Electoral Commission, looking at Article 61(2), which does not give us a leeway to propose, even to suggest, even to contemplate postponing our inability to comply with that article, our inability to comply. Let's not even talk of postponing, but our inability, because it is a command. When you are given a command, the issue is you comply or you do not comply. You get me? And therefore, we are saying it does not give us the opportunity to even contemplate our inability to obey that command. And we are saying, therefore, for us as Electoral Commission, we have to come forward and tell the country, ladies and gentlemen, dear citizens, whereas in December 2018, we rolled out this roadmap with these timelines, which we have been following until COVID came in. Now, because of this COVID and what the time we have lost, and yet, unlike rent, because I'm told some business people, some landlords are saying, okay, we forgive you the 3 months you have not been operating. You don't have to pay. Let's start from the present. But for the Electoral Commission, that provision does not allow us to forego the activities which should have been carried out in the period that COVID has eaten up. We have to carry them on. We have to carry them out.
Compress them.
We have to, because the command generally.
The inconvenience of everybody.
No. Well, of everybody, even the Electoral Commission is inconvenienced. The political parties are inconvenienced. But we are saying, in the circumstances, what can best be done? In the circumstances, what can best be done?
Justice, in 1 minute before we go to the break, Malawi, Benin,
Yeah.
Burundi,
Yes.
the United States,
Yes.
Pakistan,
Yes.
all of them have had electoral processes.
Yes.
What's unique about Uganda?
One, we are benchmarking on what happened in Malawi, in Burundi. But you saw in Burundi they had open mass air rallies.
As with Malawi.
I wish you had done a research to find out what has happened. What has happened?
As with the United States too.
Do you know what's happening in the U.S.? Yeah, are you serious? By this afternoon, they were saying that they have recorded the highest infection rate from the time COVID was declared in the U.S. 50,000 as of today, the highest. The states which had opened up, they have clamped down again. The bars which had opened up, they have. Do we want to go back? Do we want to have that kind of scenario? I should have thought, as Ugandans, we should do, patting ourselves on the back and saying hallelujah to the Lord, because we have managed to avoid the grave ramifications of this pandemic. We do not have any recorded death. By this afternoon, I think the U.S. they had recorded 130,000 deaths. In Brazil, it is a nightmare. Deaths which other country we are talking about? The Pakistan is the same story. But we are saying, for the reason.
Is that because of an election?
Which one?
Or that is happening in these countries?
No, we are saying.
Is the sole reason just because it's an election?
No, we are saying in Uganda, we managed at the earliest opportunity, at the earliest instance, to put in place measures that have prevented this pandemic from having a devastating impact as it has had in other countries. Is this the time for us to lessen these measures now?
Let's give 1 minute and then we go into the break.
Which rally? is going to be bigger than what is happening in Chikubo.
Well, I had a word to say on Kikubo. I have a word to respond on
I
Kikubo.
forgot my picture. I wish I had come. I want you to do a comparison.
No, General Muntu showed us in Sheraton
I know you are
a video clip.
benchmarking on Malawi. Don't benchmark very far. Go to Kikubo and get the other rallies you could have seen, do a comparison, and tell me if what is happening in America is just because of an election.
All right.
Once that is answered, then...
In America, the rally that Trump held in Tulsa without social distancing, 8 of his staffers were contracted the virus.
Justice, I am the returning officer for this show, so I must really take our people into a break. We will return for the final part of this show where we get into the process of the election and also for final comments from our guests today. But do take a break now. We'll return with you. Thank you so much for staying with us on NTV On The Spot. A lot of questions of yours are coming through social media channels. Our numbers are online for you to call. They are right on your screen, so you can call those numbers and engage us in a phone call conversation. Will allow you to have your chance to engage Justice Simon Byabakama, who is the principal chair of the Electoral Commission now, and Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde, who is a presidential aspirant. But I have some social media feedback that I wanted us to get in touch with. Number one is Ivan Rugambwa, who says, it now seems more than ever that the abnormality test is replacing the substantiality test on whether the election passes the mark or not. We have here Onen Philip, who is asking, have you surrendered the process to the health ministry? And then to you, Lieutenant General Tumukunde, the nationalization of radios. But I want us to first take the phone call because someone is on the phone right now. Yes, hello, caller. Who are you? Where are you calling from? And what's your question?
My question goes to the chairman of the Electoral Commission.
All right. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Geoffrey Namoda. I'm calling from Busia.
All right.
My question goes to the chairman of the Electoral Commission. The other day when he appeared in Parliament, he was saying that he would allow people, a group of 30 people. But the other time, when people in Parliament, there were over 500 people, why can't we do the same if there's social distancing? When you go to the driving permit place, First Technologies, there are very many people there, and they are social distancing and are giving permit. Why can't he allow the candidates to allow organize big meetings, say of 300, 500 people, as long as there is social distancing?
All right. Thank you so much for your question. I think that Justice Simon Byabakama has written that down. Another phone call. Let's first hear that phone call. Who are you? Where are you calling from? And where's your question? Who is it to?
My name is David Sirame. I'm calling from Untinda. Yeah, my question goes to the chairman. He's talking about, my question is on that polling day. Will there be social distancing? Shall we be sharing the same pen? What will happen on that day? Because we are minding so much about the process to the end. How about the end itself? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Let's start with you, Lieutenant General Tumukunde, and then we get to the EC chair. So you mentioned that the period between now and the end of the electoral period, it would be nice to nationalize radios so that they can give chance and space for candidates to engage with each other. Someone is asking just how feasible is this in a free market economy like Uganda? Wouldn't that have to append the entire cut?
I don't know if my question was heard very well. I was just ridiculing the whole process. Simply saying, these are not your radios. Unless you want to run to 1969 years, I mean the days of nationalization, you have no powers over somebody's radio. It's not yours. There is no laws you are going to apply it on my shirt. It's mine, and that's what it is. UCC has got regulations. By the way, I'm told they have just renewed regulations, and we are trying to look at these regulations. I'm trying to access it. I'm told these regulations are even more complex, actually loop-sided when it comes down to. So I'm not saying, I'm simply saying what else is going to be done to be able to prevail over these privately owned assets. They're not yours. I'm simply saying if they are not yours. You cannot draw rules. You cannot send me into the wilderness. Because it's not in your control. It's not in your means. Unless now we are now going to say that UCC is also going to become Health Act. UCC, I don't know if they have a law that's, I'm sure they do. And then Electoral Commission. How are we going to manage all this cocktail? I was just ridiculing it.
Okay, Justice Simon Biakama, there were questions that came to you from the public.
Yes.
You presented to over 500 MPs. Can't people like Lieutenant General Tumukunde also have 500 people socially distanced and talk to them?
No, I think that's an exaggeration. There were not five. First of all, that house does not comprise of 500
It's
MPs.
about 300, yes. But the exaggeration is
and
to make the
secondly,
point.
we were appearing before a committee of parliament,
Yes.
not the plenary. And the committee of parliament, it were not 500.
MPs are way above 300.
Yeah, exactly, but not 500. But second and most, the room where we were is quite spacious, quite large, and people observed social distancing. We had our masks on, and this is what we are saying. In our discussions with the Lieutenant General Tumukunde and other stakeholders, these are measures, things we are looking at. For example, when General Tumukunde must have agents. How will he interact with these agents if he does not meet with them? So that's why he's saying we are looking at other means.
Thank you for once.
Yes, of course, General. I'm always on your side. So
that could be dangerous, but please, let's continue.
so really,
interfere with his impartiality.
what we are trying to say, that these are measures that we are looking at and say for purposes of enabling the presidential candidates or aspirants to interact with their agents, let's have controlled, organized meetings where social distancing can be observed. You see? So in my view, therefore, what we are trying to say, what is happening? Let me comment about what's happening in Kikubo. First and foremost, in this fight we are involved in light of the measures that government has put in place, is what is happening in Kikubo right? Is it right in this context we are in? I don't think it is right. I think people need to be cautious and serious about observing these measures. Now, if a wrong is taking place somewhere, should we replicate that wrong elsewhere? Does a wrong give rise to another wrong in order for the right to be realized? I don't think so.
You become perfected when it comes to elections.
So
the rest can move on.
So my own view is, let Minister of Health be put to task. And say, Minister of Health, given what's happening in Kikubo, where there is general mixing and so on and so forth, why don't you carry out some sample tests and see what are the likely offshoots of this kind of engagement that's taking place? Is a cluster that has developed, a cluster of infections that has developed from that place or not? If it has not, what does that show? Does it show probably Uganda, we have managed to contain the virus to the extent that even when we mingle, we do not get infected, we become something like that. And therefore, what if also it happens at a rally? But it's not for the Electoral Commission to say, given what, in view of what we are seeing in Kikubo with our two eyes, therefore, I think it is okay. Public rallies can go on. No, we cannot draw that conclusion. Then the other question was on the issue of whether we have surrendered our authority to Minister of Health. Not at all.
And
we have,
UCC has seemed to be.
even UCC, we have not. We have not surrendered our authority to any agency or any authority. We are not. The Constitution is very clear. All we are saying that given these challenges today, as they are, can we work with other agencies and see what do they say, what advice, what guidance are they giving us on how we can safely manage our processes? For example, one of the agencies we work with is security in elections. You see, police and so on. Does it mean when we engage police, we have surrendered our authority to the police? It's not at all.
In some cases, yes.
Not at all. Not at all. General, you know that very well. Not at all. So in these instances, therefore...
You can also take my view.
What
because I've been in
The
Uganda.
former security minister is contesting
here.
I will not use the word I wanted to use. But the point we are making is we have not surrendered our authority to Minister of Health, but we are mindful of the need to keep the lives of Ugandans safe. We are relying on the guidance of experts on how we can go to achieve that at the same time. Hold on. The last question was from yes, on polling day. Yes, this is a very important question. I have said, and I reiterate, that on yes, thank you, General. I had not been given time to ask. On polling day, we shall observe social distancing, assuming the situation in the country remains as it is today. There will be social distancing, and I have said...
And how many days will you need, Chairman, for the election?
One day.
With social distancing?
But Chairman,
the dynamics.
Just to explain the context of the question the man was asking, the pen that we're going to use might be the same. The BVR kit you're going to use might be the same.
We shall have BBVK. Yes. The first point of call is the BBVK. First of all, as you get to the polling station, we shall have sanitizers in place. As you get into the queue, we shall have sanitizers in place. Then we'll tell you social distance. Then you get to BBVK, you put your thumbprint. Once you are done with the process, you are given the ballot paper. There will be somebody to sanitize that
the ballot paper.
The glass. The polling officials will have been sanitized. They will have sanitizers with them at very regular intervals. They sanitize their hands. Okay? And remember, it is only one person who plucks out the ballot paper and gives it to the voter. Only one person, the presiding officer. The BVK will be sanitized. Then the basin. We are not going to rely on only one pen. We are going to have many pens. This lot is used, these are sanitized, and these are brought.
Chairman, I just beg for clarity. You have a polling station,
honestly,
like Kisenyi.
The efficiency you are predicting is fascinating.
Yes, we have a polling station like Kisenyi, which has almost 10,000 voters.
No, there is no single. No, let me correction.
Yes, but I have observed people wake up in the morning
at 6. Point of
6.
information. Yes. There is no single polling station that has 10,000 voters.
No, but if you wake up in the morning at 6 a.m., you find long lines. Yes. And I've covered elections before. Yes. 6 a.m., people have long lines waiting for polling material to arrive.
Yes.
Till 6 p.m., when the voting closes, you have people standing on that line.
No.
So you're telling me sanitizing this thing and cleaning it. Is this efficiency?
This efficiency over 34,000. Actually, I didn't know they had increased. 34,344 stations.
Yes.
He told me he's going to position a police officer and I'm sure a rough-edged LDU. What is going to happen? We are going to have 2 people. The whole of Uganda will have no supervision. Everybody will be supervising polling stations. There will not be policemen anywhere. If circumstances happen anywhere, we shall have none. Maybe they will deploy the army still.
All right, let's have some more phone calls. We have phone calls. I can hear the phone ringing. So where are you calling from, your name and your question, so we can have as many questions in?
I'm William Kaki. My question: how now, like now in the security issues, these are the ones in time. How are the Electoral Commission going to manage that?
I didn't get your question. What was it exactly? How are the RDCs?
The RDCs are the cadres of NRM. How are the security issues going to be taken?
All right, let's take another caller. We lost that one, but I think that you got the complaint about the RDCs being state agents.
Say the RDC is the chairman of the District Security Committee. He may not be expressing it very well.
Let's get another caller. Where are you calling from and what's your question? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, where are you calling from? What's your question? Who is it addressed to?
William from Masaka.
All right.
I just want to inform the chairperson of the Electoral Commission that the general election is just like a human being if you are basing on science, and that the mass campaign rallies are just like the heart of a human being. If you remove that heart, you remain with a dead body. So if you remove the campaign mass rallies, you not have an election. So they should sit and allow us to go for a fair and free general election. Let's see it.
All right, let's take another phone call, and then one last one, and then we come back to our panelists.
Hello.
Yes, what's your question and who is it addressed to?
Lawrence Kamocha.
All right.
My question is, how are they going to...
Okay, we lost the caller there, but let's address some of the concerns that have come out. And one that's clear, of course, is the RDCs. How are you addressing that as a solution?
In our interactions with the various stakeholders, that is a constant concern. That the RDCs, they do this, they do this. Let me make it very clear. We are having a general election with the challenges posed by COVID. We are deploying measures to countermand, to counter the effects of COVID. Now, every RDC, every security agency authority is expected, therefore, to fall in line. If we say people are going to have talk shows at night, okay, candidates. Yes, yes, they are going to expected to go for talk shows at night. Curfew is in place. Please, these are candidates. Do not interfere with them. Do not disrupt the process for which the Electoral Commission and the government has sanctioned that we should have these elections conducted or campaigns conducted in such a manner. Anyone who does that, we shall deal with him.
Who will deal with him?
The authority.
Using which laws,
the law,
Mr. Chairman?
The law. The law.
Under whose command?
Under the command of the authority of the Constitution. The Constitution says that nobody is above the law, period. Nobody is above the law.
But it also specifies who commands that very law and who has authority to
we shall
turn it effective.
Again, it's clear that the consultations have not yet...
we shall yield the results.
You see, that's a whole subject. Up to now, we are consulting. And we are going to continue to consult.
Exactly. Thank you,
New laws are coming up.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General.
It's not about how long, when are you stopping the consultation, Mr. Chairman, and when are we starting the process? This is 2nd June today?
No, 2nd July.
2nd July, sorry. So my main question is, when are we finishing all these processes? That's why I'm saying, why pack all these things? What is of emergency? What is more cardinal about an election that is not about other factors of life?
Chairman, I want us now to switch a little bit in gears. And I have a question here from one of the people who intends to participate in the election. And they're asking, one of the key things that will keep the Electoral Commission in line is having international observers in the election. Have you considered international observers in this election? Have any reached out to you? Have you reached out to any of them about the processes that you're conducting right now? Have you afforded them clarity and openness in the processes you're dealing with?
There is no single day or reason the Electoral Commission has ever contemplated excluding observers, be they local or international, from our electoral processes. No single day. And I want anyone to quote...
Has anybody signaled that they are coming?
Yes, well, you see, look, one...
Rather, we have a view that some don't want to...
One, I'm told there are protocol issues.
Maybe we could hear it.
I'm told there are protocol issues. If someone is coming as an international observer, I think you go either through, is it Minister of Foreign Affairs or something? I don't know the engagement. But we have an accreditation committee, a national accreditation committee in place at the Electoral Commission, which looks at all the applications for accreditation to observe elections, okay? And I want to say, any international observer who expresses an interest to come and observe our elections, we shall handle that application in the normal event. We have had international observers all along. Why would this one be an exception?
Mr. Chairman, may you have heard from Burundi? Yes.
Burundi?
Yes.
What happened? I'm told they did not allow them there.
11 days to an election, they said you come in, we shall hold you in for
but even
14 days.
But even without elections, I'm told, did I hear, was it UK where I was saying if you go in, they first quarantine you for a number of days?
Yes.
Is it because you're going to observe elections?
Part of the Public Health Act that we're talking about.
But I want
Lieutenant to come to General Tumukunde. They are seemingly, from what we've heard from the Electoral Commission Chairman, not much is going to change from the structure of what we've been given as a roadmap. Are you going to participate in this election the way it is? And these concerns that you're raising, how else are you going to address them if the Electoral Commission doesn't listen?
I want to be very clear. I am a candidate in this forthcoming election.
Amen.
I mean to stand.
Amen.
But what is most important is that this election must be free and fair in order to justify us to be part of this election. The battles we are going through is to make sure that this election is free and fair. The ground is leveled. Yes, I am going to stand. There are many other things we can discuss, and we are discussing with whoever is concerned. But the whole truth is, shall it be a free and fair election? And if it is not, are we just going to dump ourselves into it? And from what I'm hearing, I can only hear the chairman defending what is on ground and what is about to be on ground. Like this law he says he has not seen, and I don't want to really impose it on him. But on top of all this, there is no reason being clearly laid out by the chairman that the efficiency, the equipping, the resources, the logistics of Electoral Commission have improved so tremendous as to take care of the many things we've been raising in this discussion. One of them being, if you needed one car, you will now need 10. If you needed one ink pad, you are going to have, I don't know, I heard him saying they are going to be sanitizing and returning them. Mr. Chairman, if you look at the full scale of what you are discussing, so much will have to change. My worry is, are you mindful of what is going to change? And do you have the capacity to cater for this change?
I want to ask you a very clear question. Are you confident that the Justice Simon Byabakama Electoral Commission can deliver a free and fair election in which you can participate in?
You see, this is the first question the first issue I started with. You are pinning me against the chairman as a person.
No. I am just asking because you are a candidate.
That's what you are simply saying.
Yes, but are you confident to submit yourself
From what we've discussed,
yes.
If I could return that question to you, Mr. Mjuni, do you have minimum confidence in this whole process? You can answer on my behalf. Because this is common logic. It's common sense. Look at all these things. How many pens are they going to procure? And how many sanitizing systems are they going to have to make sure that, in any case, who is going to supervise all this? Have we known Ugandans to be disciplined? And if they are not, what risk are we going to get? If it's about life, which is preaching, are we actually in position to protect life? We are actually endangering life.
Justice Simon Byabakama, I'm going to ask you some very specific questions about the efficiency of the Electoral Commission. Number one, do you have BVR kits for 36,000 polling stations, as you mentioned? Are they functional and working? And can they be delivered with the resources you have at your disposal?
The process of acquiring them is in advanced stages.
Are you replacing from the previous BVR kits?
Because but you know technology.
Have you got a new budget?
You know technology. You know technology. Now I'm told what you were using in 2016, that's obsolete technology. So we are acquiring a new technology in the area of the BBVS system to ensure that the voters are sufficiently identified.
When you say new technology, what does it mean? New software or new laptops?
Well, I'm not very convinced that our technical people are there, but they have told me we cannot use. I'm not a technological expert. I'm not an expert, but I'm told we cannot use the equipment we used in 2016. They are old. They are what? So we have to acquire a new system. Yes.
Chairman, the other thing is the procurement of ballot papers. Yes. It's at the heartline of the election. Absolutely. It's at the heartline of the credibility. Yes. You have issued bids and 3 companies have expressed interest, at least from what we gather. Yeah. Which companies are those, in all openness and transparency?
Well, I don't have the details because...
Are they Ugandan companies?
I do not have any reason. I do not have any reason
Uganda.
I do not have any reason to cram the names of whoever has bid for which service.
Honestly, Chairman, if you asked me, the cameras inside this room, I can tell you each of them, as and when.
But this is
where you are going to source.
Yes, and I'm asking you in your backyard.
Where you are going to source ballot paper? This is so important for the chairman.
Yes,
I can guarantee. I can give you the information tomorrow after verifying, cross-checking. Because as I said, I do not have
It
any
is because
reason.
the
I
chairman
do
is
not-
engaged in managing
let's-
very difficult circumstances.
let's
other than
allow
the
him-
critical things that
Yes.
matter most.
Let's
Like
allow him to
answering
answer.
questions over matters that Ugandans don't seem to understand.
Yes.
Let alone his own staff. Today
All right.
I met some, they had different views from the chairman.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
please respond to these concerns. It's really important because this is the heartline of our democracy. This is the future of the country.
Absolutely. And I want to say,
Yes.
you cannot have an election without ballot papers. You can't. And the process of procuring these ballot papers was commenced upon by writing bids and so on and so forth.
Were
Okay.
they advertised?
Yeah, we did advertise. We advertised. You know, we advertised, and so many companies applied. But I do not have the particular names of the companies who applied, who have been vetted or whatever they called. No, I do not have. You remember, I do not take part in that. I do not participate in that process. We have a contracts committee, and the entire within the PPDA.
We are
rules
hearing
as
it
defined,
from you, Mr.
the
Chairman.
PPDA
Not
rules,
everybody knew.
with PPDA rules and regulations and so on. So they did their work. They informed us of what was done, and we looked at what they did. But I do not have any. I did not cram the names of the companies that bid, that applied, that did one. No, I do not.
But at
if
least
you want,
Chairman,
if
yes.
you want that information,
I-
we can furnish
At
it.
least you know
and-
where they are coming from. At
From
least.
where?
Tell us. I mean,
They
how
were-
can you not know?
Mr.
The
Chairman.
ballot papers, yes.
No,
The other question I want to ask you, and this one I really want you to be honest with Ugandans.
Yes.
You need over 250,000 polling agents to conduct this election.
Yes.
You need to interview these polling agents. You
Yes.
haven't issued a call for them between now and February when they should
let
be
alone
available.
train them.
Do you have the competent capacity with social distancing, with COVID-19, to have that human resource at your disposal across the country?
First and foremost, there are various categories of officials we employ during the general election, who are basically temporary, what we call temporary staff. Now, you have what we call the supervisors, sub-county supervisors, and parish supervisors. These are the ones who oversee the activities that take place in the parishes and sub-counties. Now, then you have what we call the activity-based polling officials. For example, during the display, we did send out advertisements across the country. People applied. We recruited display officials. We recruited, first of all, we started with up-to-date officials who applied across the country, those who were engaged in operating the national voters register. Then display officials, they applied. Now those ones, they did their part and it is over. They are no longer, we are no longer paying them. Now we are
Talk about the polling agents.
Now polling
Yes.
agents also contract staff.
Yes, but
Because,
have you
and
started
those
the
ones,
process?
you can
When do
only,
you intend
can
to
only
recruit them,
you
screen them,
recruit them, you recruit
and
them
confirm them and
as you
train them.
approach as you approach the process. As you approach the process, you recruit them and then train them, which we are going to do. And indeed, when the time comes, the whole public will know, the whole country will know, we are now recruiting polling officials. Please apply, okay? And we shall take them through the normal vetting process and inform the public. But we are saying that one has not yet come, okay? So we shall recruit those people when the time comes.
Everything is we shall. We shall.
we-
We are
we
in
have-
the process.
yes, we have a
We
few
are
min-
planning.
Yes, we have
we
a
are
few-
consulting.
Yes,
We are-
we have a few minutes to
Oh.
close. I'm going to allow General Mukunde to make his concluding remarks. But my last question to you again, and these are questions based off of previous experiences with the Electoral Commission that now must be corrected. If the election happens, 17.7 million voters, as you say, if they show up, the amount of time you need to process each of them and make sure that each of them votes and produces a result at the end of the day. Have you scientifically arrived at the calculation to say this is how much time a voter will spend in a polling station? And I'm asking this because it was key in the
Considering
Supreme Court
social
petition.
distance,
Have you calculated this? Is this science available, and is it something the Electoral Commission is working with?
I think, first of all, I don't know whether to call it is science, but I think what we are going to do is to
It can only
massively,
be scientific.
we are going to massively mobilize the public. Just like the public were mobilized and sensitized about these measures to fight COVID, we are going also to mobilize the public that given this pandemic and some of the measures we are going to
We
put
shall.
at polling stations, please can you make sure, one, you approach the polling stations as early as possible, start from 7 o'clock when the polling station is open, then observe these SOPs. Then thirdly, we look, the time, for example, when we talk of social distancing, it is 2 meters, they say. We are not social distancing by 1 mile, such that we say now Yawakama is here in the queue, General Tumukunde, the next voter is in one day.
2 meters. 2
So
meters times 100 people is 200
exactly.
meters.
So I'm not saying we are going
Just
to have
do that scientific calculation.
I'm not saying, General, that we are going to have 100 people in the queue. I was only giving an illustration that we can say 20 people depending on the space at the polling station.
Okay,
If
let's
the
allow.
polling station is this room, for the size of this room, how many people can social distance in room? This is what we are talking about. And therefore we are saying...
Chairman, you should allow me to give my views.
Okay, please, concluding remarks.
Alpha and
yes.
Omega.
Yes.
The months lost during COVID and the likely circumstances that we are going to face in between now and December, including the serious resurgence of COVID, are certainly not in full consideration of the chairman and his team. That is point number one. Point number two, we have since discovered from his discussion that he does not have new resources accredited to him. So I'm not even too sure that even if he becomes so innovative, he has the means to do anything. Point number three, even as we talk, new laws are coming in. Point number four, parties are not prepared. They have not even, you can imagine the ruling party has spent 6 days in a discussion. And I think this could be a result of what we are seeing here. But what I'm saying, there are so much processes that have to be gone through before we reach the end, like the radio caller said, before we reach the end of this election. The other point I have to make, I agree with you, all the personnel he may require, he has not started recruiting them. The equipment he requires, it's not, we are not sure it's procured. All these things have one story, that you are rushing and bumping into an election. And my main question is why? Why an election? Why not something else?
All right. Justice Simon Byabakama, your concluding remarks.
My concluding remarks, I want to assure the people of Uganda that the Electoral Commission is prepared to ensure that the people have a free and fair election in spite of the challenges posed by COVID. But let me also say this. In order for the country to have a free and fair election, the Electoral Commission cannot work alone. We need the support, the cooperation of all stakeholders, the political parties, the security agents, the media. Now and that you are going to play a key role. Oh yes, General Tumukunde,
put it on record.
The eminent General Tumukunde, we need your cooperation because you are coming as an independent candidate. The commission is willing to cooperate with you to ensure that you get your 100 signatures from the districts, and we shall clear any obstacle that comes your way so that we realize this constitutional requirement of having these elections conducted within that period. Why rush? I have said, all of us, the entire country, is obliged to comply with Article 61, Clause 2 of the Constitution. And that's why we have to compact all these activities. Nobody invited COVID, for goodness sake. Nobody invited COVID. If the Commission had the power or the authority, would we chase COVID out of the way so that we see General Tumukunde dancing at a political rally? They would do that at a campaign rally.
Thank God, like you didn't invite it, Mr. Chairman. You have no control over it. You don't know where it's taking us. You don't know what it's like at the end like. You are simply being part of a greater body that is speculating.
All right.
COVID is not our business. We don't know enough about it.
But in life we live on hope.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure this debate will come to an end, but we will have much more of these debates as the time goes on. Of course, we've had Lieutenant General Henry Tumukunde, who's a presidential aspirant in the forthcoming election. We've had Justice Simon Byabakama, who is the Electoral Commission Chairman. This has been NTV on the Spot. Thank you so much to our producer, Herbert Ziwa, who's kept us within our time. Thank you so much to Daniel Etwalo and the entire technical team that kept us on our toes. And thank you so much, our viewers, for joining us for this show. From us to you, have yourselves a good night.